Have you ever thought about this gut punch of a question? If there really is a second half after we die, then what exactly is all this effort for right now? Or to put it another way, if this life is just 1 minute out of thousands of reincarnations, would you still be this anxious? Today's topic might determine the deepest logic behind your entire worldview. Don't scroll away. This isn't just a history lesson. This is a breakdown of humanity's 5 biggest survival cheat codes. This video is a little long, but after you finish it, the way you see the world will absolutely be different. Let's get into it. Human beings are actually pretty interesting creatures. No matter the era, no matter the place, everyone keeps asking the same 3 brutal questions. Where did I come from? What am I supposed to do with this life? And where do I go after I die? This fear of the unknown is the shared background color of every civilization. And in order to keep from being scared to death by that fear, humanity invented something: religion. You can think of it as the instruction manual humans wrote for the universe. That manual tells us that above us, these carbon-based creatures, there must be some greater power or higher dimension. We all sprang out of that source, and in the end, we all have to return to it. If you don't understand that logic, life feels like driving a long-distance road trip with no navigation. Deep down, you feel completely unsteady. So religion became that spiritual GPS. Let's start with the oldest veteran of them all: Hinduism. It's like a 5,000-year-old encyclopedia. If you go to India, you'll find that this is not just a religion. It's a whole collection of ways of living. It doesn't have one single pope or one fixed set of rules. It's more like a gigantic supermarket of faith, where you can find whatever style of spiritual practice you want. About 5,000 years ago, the age of Krishna kicked all this off. Krishna was recognized as a being of such extraordinary virtue that people believed he was an incarnation of Vishnu. That means God took on human form to come down and demonstrate things in person. The core move he taught humanity was karma. You can think of it as a kind of cosmic credit score system. Every single thing you do, every word you say, even every thought you have, adds or subtracts points from that system. That is the law of cause and effect, and nobody escapes it. Your duty is simply to do the work you are meant to do according to your place in society, which is called dharma. And the most brilliant part is this: Krishna said that when you work, don't obsess over the result. Don't keep fixating on how big the year-end bonus will be or what other people think of you. As long as you sincerely fulfill your duty, that is enough. Good karma will accumulate. That mindset is actually incredibly healing. It lets you put down that excessive anxiety about the future. So, what happens after death? In Hinduism, it is basically just changing clothes. Your soul enters a new body. If you racked up enough cosmic credit in this life, you level up in the next one. Your social rank rises. But if you waste this life or do evil, then next time around, you may get demoted. This cycle, round after round, is like running endlessly on a spinning wheel. That is samsara, the cycle of rebirth. At this point, you might be thinking, wow, spinning forever sounds exhausting. Exactly. That is why the highest reward in Hinduism isn't just getting reborn into a better life. It is getting completely off the wheel. If you accumulate enough sacred good karma, you can attain liberation. That is called moksha. It is like finally beating the game. You don't have to respawn back in the beginner village anymore. You return instead to the source of the universe itself. From the Hindu perspective, everything is actually one. The entire universe is a transcendent reality called Brahman. Although there is only one Brahman, there are many gods under that reality. Think of it like a huge corporation. Brahman is the chairman of the board, and below that are the heads of different departments. For example, Brahma is in charge of creation. He is the product manager who brings things from nothing into existence. Vishnu is in charge of preservation. He is the architect making sure the world doesn't crash. Shiva is in charge of transformation. He uses destruction to open the door to a new cycle, which is why he is also called the Lord of the Dance. And that destruction isn't just destruction. It is making room for new life. Then there is Ganesha, the elephant-headed god. He is the guardian of wisdom and success. People love praying to him before exams or before starting a business, because he helps clear obstacles out of the way. Today, there are 1 billion Hindus in the world. Most of them live in India, but their influence has already spread all over the globe. Next, let's head west, across deserts and mountains, to the land known as the Fertile Crescent. This is where a hardcore religion was born: Judaism. About 4,000 years ago, back in an era when everybody worshipped all kinds of strange gods, Abraham and Sarah made a crazy decision. They decided to believe in one and only one true God. At that time, this was a revolutionary idea. It was like the whole world was using all kinds of random off-brand phones. and they suddenly said, "We're going to build our own operating system." God made a covenant with them. "If you trust in me, I will give you land and descendants beyond counting." That is where the idea of the chosen people came from. But that covenant was not easy to carry. The history of Judaism. It is basically a top difficulty survival game. They were enslaved in Egypt and lived through unimaginable suffering. Then Moses appeared, and he led them out to freedom. On Mount Sinai, he received the famous 10 Commandments. Those commandments were not just religious rules, they were humanity's earliest moral bottom lines. Although they later conquered the Promised Land, that land sat on a major crossroads. Every army passing through wanted to step on it, until in the year 70, the Romans destroyed their temple. Something like that might have wiped out another people entirely, but Judaism pulled off an epic transformation. It no longer depended on a temple or animal sacrifice. It became a religion that lived through books. In other words, if they tear down the building, we will carry the faith in our minds instead. They gathered their historical writings together into the Hebrew Bible, also known as the Tanakh. To understand what those texts meant, generation after generation wrote explanations, compiled into a massive work called the Talmud. This is basically an enormous case law library. Jewish life has long revolved around learning and debating these texts, and that respect for knowledge is carved deep into the bones of the tradition. You will find symbolic meaning everywhere in Jewish life. At the Passover meal, the bitter herbs symbolize the suffering of slavery, and salt water symbolizes tears. By eating those foods, they force themselves to remember what their ancestors went through. That kind of education hits hard. When children reach the age of 13, they go through coming-of-age ceremonies. That means from this point on, you are fully responsible for your own actions. You cannot keep hiding behind the excuse of being young. Today, there are about 14 million Jews in the world. That is not a huge number, but their influence on the world speaks for itself. That is the power of faith, combined with knowledge. After seeing the resilience of Judaism, let us rewind the clock to 2,500 years ago. Return to India, the land where another miracle was born. This is where Buddhism appeared. It began with a young prince named Siddhartha, who would later become the Buddha. Legend says that on the day he was conceived, his mother, Queen Maya, dreamed that a white elephant entered her body. That was taken as a sign that someone extraordinary was coming into the world. Siddhartha grew up inside a palace, enjoying the best life imaginable. His father, trying to protect him from sorrow, kept sickness, aging, and death outside the palace walls. But Siddhartha was a curious prince. One day he secretly left the palace, and reality shattered him. He saw people dying of illness. He saw people so old they could barely walk. He saw funeral processions. For the first time, he realized that whether you're a prince or a peasant, everyone has to suffer. So he gave up wealth and luxury, and set out to find the root of suffering. First, he tried becoming an ascetic, starving himself down to skin and bones. But he discovered that this did not bring enlightenment. It only made his mind more chaotic. Then one day he heard a music teacher say, "If you tighten the string too much, it will snap. If you loosen it too much, it won't make a sound." In that instant, he understood. The answer is not found in extremes. It lies in the middle. That became the famous middle way. He sat beneath the Bodhi tree for 7 days and 7 nights. And finally, he understood. Life itself is suffering, because we are always craving what we cannot get, or trying to hold on to what is destined to disappear. That selfish craving is like a photocopier for suffering. As long as craving keeps running, the pain keeps getting copied. If you want to stop the machine, you have to follow an 8-step path of practice, the Noble Eightfold Path. This is not just about what you believe. It is about how you speak, how you act, and how you direct your attention. Siddhartha became the Buddha, which means the awakened one. He taught people to be compassionate, to stay calm, and to see reality clearly. The coolest thing about Buddhism is that it does not demand blind worship of some god. It tells you to practice for yourself and find peace by mastering your own mind. Today, there are nearly 1 billion Buddhists in the world, especially in Asia. That wisdom of letting go and going with the flow has already seeped deep into all of our subconscious minds. Next, let's talk about Christianity, currently the biggest religion on earth by number of followers. 2,000 years ago, in that same promised land of Judaism, Christianity was born. It was like a new flower, blooming from the old tree of Judaism. Just as Hinduism says that God can take human form, Christians understand Jesus in a similar way. The angel Gabriel told Mary, "You will give birth to the Son of God." That child was Jesus. For the first 30 years of his life, Jesus was actually pretty low-key. He worked as a carpenter with his earthly father Joseph, doing ordinary manual labor. Then at the age of 30, he began his public ministry. Jesus was not especially interested in complicated religious rituals. He cared much more about justice and human mercy. He healed people, which drew crowds, and then he taught them. The God he spoke of was not some distant deity sitting above everyone, looking angry. He spoke of a God, like a loving father. Jesus did something incredibly radical for his time. He invited the people society pushed aside, the sinners, and the lowest people on the social ladder, to sit at the same table with everyone else. He used that to show what he believed the kingdom of God should be, a place where all souls are equal and people are called to love one another. But the way he challenged authority quickly enraged the powerful people of his day. He only preached for 3 years before he was arrested and executed. On a Roman cross, Jesus finished his bodily life. But Christians believe that 3 days later, he rose again. That message spread through the world like wildfire and gave enormous hope to people living in despair. The core message of Christianity is very simple. Love. Love your neighbor, the way Jesus loved humanity. Even love your enemies. Today, Christianity has many branches: Catholicism, Eastern Orthodoxy, and Protestantism. Christians celebrate his birth at Christmas and his return at Easter. Through rituals like baptism and communion, they connect that 2,000-year-old story to their own lives. There are now 2 billion Christians in the world, about 1/3 of the entire human population. Its influence has penetrated every corner of law, art, and morality. Finally, let's talk about Islam. It began 1400 years ago in the Arabian desert. Its founder, Muhammad, was a merchant of extremely noble character. One day, while meditating in a cave, the angel Gabriel appeared once again. The angel delivered to him the words of Allah, the same one God worshipped by Abraham. Over the next 23 years, the revelations kept coming. Muhammad was not a poet, yet the verses he recited were beautiful like music from heaven, filled with elegant rhythms and profound metaphors that convinced the people around him that this absolutely could not have been made up by a human being. It had to be the word of God. That is how the earliest believers came into being. They called themselves Muslims, which means people who submit to the will of God. Islam has a very strong sense of discipline. It has 5 required pillars of practice. First is the declaration of faith. You publicly proclaim what you believe. Second is prayer. You face the holy city of Mecca and pray 5 times a day. That is actually an incredible system of self-discipline. It forces you to pause and reflect in the middle of a busy life. Then comes almsgiving. You give part of your wealth to help the poor. That helps preserve social compassion and a sense of responsibility. Then there is fasting. During Ramadan, you do not eat or drink during daylight hours. That is meant to strengthen your willpower and help you understand what hunger feels like for the poor. Finally, there is pilgrimage. If your health and your finances allow it, you are supposed to go to Mecca once in your lifetime. There you will see millions of people dressed alike, gathered together with no distinction between rich and poor. The feeling of that moment is beyond description. These revealed words were later gathered into the Quran. Muslims believe it is the only holy book that has never been altered. It is also considered the peak of Arabic literature. There are now more than 1.5 billion Muslims around the world. It is one of the fastest growing religions on earth. What it emphasizes is discipline, submission, and an extremely pure force of faith. Now, after talking about all of this, have you noticed something? Even though these 5 major religions have different rituals, histories, and styles, they are all doing the same basic thing. They are trying to carry you beyond the emptiness of everyday life, beyond the fear of death, beyond the suffering caused by greed. All of them are reminding us not to spend our whole lives picking up sixpence, but to occasionally look up at the moon. If human beings don't believe in something, life can start to feel pretty hollow. You don't have to join any one of these systems. But once you understand them, you hold a key to understanding human psychology. If there's one idea or belief from these traditions that touched you, or if you think this ancient wisdom still matters in an age of AI, tell me loudly in the comments. Don't just watch, let's actually interact. And while you're at it, hit follow. In the next episode, we're going to talk about something even more mind-bending. If AI really becomes conscious, will it develop religion? Will it worship humans as gods? Want to know the answer? See you next time.